Okay, so I don't even know if I hit record the first time but anyway, today I want to talk to you. I want to talk about language. I'm going to be doing my review for Alien Earth later, but I want to talk about language today, specifically the words autism and retarded. Because people are talking about autism a lot. And this is something I wanted to say like years ago, but I didn't. So people are talking about autism a lot today in America because of politics, of course. It's 2025 when I'm recording this, so everything's happening because of politics now. Politics is very polarizing in America this year. Um, okay, and has been for at least the last decade, but always anyway. So the word autism. So back in the days, people used to refer to people who had learning disabilities as retarded until this word became known as a slur. But it wasn't a made up slur. It was the scientific term that was used. Now, I know people are going to say, oh, I've seen people say in online arguments, oh, well, psychologists used to think that homosexuality was a mental disorder. And so they were wrong about that. That doesn't mean like, okay, people, um, interracial marriage used to be illegal. Now it's not, and it should have never been illegal. That doesn't mean that everything that was ever illegal should have never been illegal. That doesn't mean murder should be legal now just because there's been laws throughout history that were unjust and were used to just control the population, period. And the governments didn't have any right to do that. That doesn't mean every law should just be thrown out. And that is just the same way every psychological term should not be thrown out just because psychologists were wrong about things in the past. Now, the thing about the word retard is it was not all only pertaining to learning disabilities because it was a word before they used it to describe that. The word, I'm going to paraphrase this definition. I wanted to look it up again today, but maybe I'll probably put it in the description if my paraphrase is a little too much off. But the word basically means to impede something, to impede the progress or success of something. If something is fire retardant, it is resistant to fire. Okay, and so this word was describing that something is going on with people with learning disabilities in their brain that is impeding their brain from operating at optimal levels or average levels. There's nothing offensive about that. It's a description of what's going on. Now, people started to use the word retard as an insult for people who did not have learning disabilities to say that they were acting as if they did have learning disabilities or they were only as intelligent or even less intelligent than someone who has learning disabilities. Okay. And pretty much in society that was accepted. Now we know there's a lot of things that were accepted in society that aren't now. Now, I do think that there's been progress made, but I also think that certain things have been taken too far. And I feel this is one of them. Because of what how society is. Basically, so that started happening around like I'll say like 2012 to 2015 is when people were starting to say, maybe even as early as 2010 when people were really starting to say we shouldn't say retard anymore because it's an insult. And as soon as people started to say that, I was like, uh, anything can be an insult. If you say it insultingly or say it a certain way, like, you know, you could say a race, like, oh, them, like how people they didn't want to back in the days during like the war in Iraq, they would say, oh, those Arabs, instead of just saying Arabs, they would say Arabs as an insult. You know what I mean? That's I've seen that done with other races, Italians, and you know, if you want to say something in an offensive way and clearly be speaking offensively, then it's an insult meant to offend. Even though it's not, there's nothing wrong with being a Muslim, Arab, Italian. There's nothing wrong with being any race. And being called the race you are shouldn't be offensive to anybody. But when someone's clearly trying to offend you, you're gonna take that a certain way. Now, in the early 2000s, then a comedian came around. I keep forgetting everybody's. I'm getting older, so some people might not even know about Carlos Mencia. And he would always call people retarded in his jokes, but he wouldn't say the word retard. He would do like making fun of people who have mental issues, learning disabilities, will sometimes not be able to speak, and they'll say words that aren't words, and or somebody might have cerebral palsy or something like that. It was like a combination of things, and also, but he was saying that to make fun of people who weren't didn't have learning disabilities, but it was extremely offensive to people who whose children relatives did have learning disabilities. But he wouldn't even be calling them retarded. As far as I remember, he was saying doo doo, making fun of them. So, but not making fun of people by making fun of them, by emulating them. He's making fun of people who didn't actually have mentally challenged. So when it started to happen, that people were saying, like I said anything could be used as an insult. And shortly after the term um, autism became more popular in the lexicon of average American society, I thought to myself, this solution that they came up, just making a new word, isn't going to be a solution. And as I was thinking this, my friend sitting next to me said, "Oh, so we can't say retarded anymore? We got to say autistic?" Man, this shit is fucking autistic. Instantly, he used autistic as an insult. Now, a decade later, I was on social media and I saw somebody say, a woman posted, "I just heard someone use the word autistic as an insult for the first time." And something along the lines of humanity is a disgrace or something like that. I thought, wow, it took that long for you to hear someone say that? And yes, my friend is an asshole. I literally knew that that he was going to start using autistic as an insult as soon as I heard people started saying autistic. Now, my confusion with the word autistic, and the term, like I said, I was in school and I graduated high school in 2010, 15 years ago now. And like I had took high school, I took psychology in high school and in college, right? It was my major in college. I never heard the term autism. Like I said, I didn't finish, so maybe that was something we were going to learn about next year, next semester, whatever. But they spoke about the word retarded, and the teacher told us that's the term and what it means. blah, blah, blah. That's the actual, it's not an insult, scientific word. Just like flame retardant, you're like, it's not insulting the fire, whatever. So I thought to myself, when I first heard autism, I thought they were referring to a term that was offensive. I thought they're gonna have to stop saying that. And the term was idiot savant. And so, idiot savant, what the heck is that? Well, a savant in general is a person who has some ability that doesn't seem natural and that other people can't do. For instance, there's a guy, people that can remember every face they see, uh, every number in a sequence, something like that. Like, because of their brains, you know. There was a guy, they flew him over Manhattan one time in a helicopter, and he drew the entire city in perfect detail just for flying over it once. He didn't draw it while he was flying over. He flew over it once and drew it perfectly, street by street, no mistakes, perfect detail. He saw the city one time. Okay, that's not normal. Stuff like that. So savant, we learned about in psychology as someone with this ability. It could be mathematic. Ask them any multiplication, any math problem, and they got it like that. That's a savant. Like it's more than a genius. It's like your brain literally is doing things that normal brains can't do. It's not just operating at a higher or faster rate. You're not just understanding things more quickly. It's like other people can't do that, you know? And an idiot savant was referring to a savant who also has a learning disability. So they would, person might not be able to talk, might not be able to read, very low IQ, special ed classes type thing. But there's one thing they can just do amazingly, like incredible at art, just like really good at math, or just something, you know? And it's like in other aspects of life, this person cannot function without assistance. But give him a paintbrush and he can draw like Picasso. Sit him in front of a piano and he can play like Beethoven. But normally they can't function. That was what an idiot savant was referring to. And I always thought like people are not gonna like that term. They're gonna change that one day. So when I heard autism, I thought autism was referring to people that were previously called idiot savants. Which, like I said, come on, the word idiot is in it. So of course but they couldn't think of another way to describe it, you know. So, you know, but apparently that's not what autism is. It's a completely different thing. It's a spectrum, and it's about, like, I don't really understand it in terms of, like, I never researched autism to learn it for myself. If I researched it, I would understand it. But I'm talking about, I don't understand it from the perspective of society, in terms of people saying this is autism or that is autism. It's like, I don't think, it seems like almost the general public is deciding what it is. And general public should never really decide anything. Things should be left up to informed people, because the general public will frequently pretend to be experts on topics that they're quite ignorant of. And I don't mean just talk, if you want to talk about something like you learn about whatever, but you know, and like I said, I'm not an expert, definitely not on autism, because like I just said, I don't even know what they're trying to say when they're saying autism, because it being a spectrum seems to be making it too broad of a term. It's like you see a person with extreme learning disabilities, and they'll say, "Oh, that person has autism." And then you see a guy that's just shy, and I'm like, "Oh, he's autism. He has autism." I'm like, I'm not so sure that's the same thing. They're like, "No, it's a spectrum," and it's like that's not the same spectrum of intelligence and shyness. That's two separate spectrums. So, and I didn't even plan on putting this part in the video. I was just gonna go up to the part where I say about society, and I didn't even get to that point. What I'm trying to say is there's always gonna be whatever term if they change it from autism to this to that, make up a word tomorrow. If the word is describing people with learning disabilities, certain people are always gonna use that word as an insult to people they feel are not intelligent. This is human nature. So there was no point in changing, like, if society was still the way it was when everyone was saying retard, then everyone today would be using autistic as an insult, like that guy did, like my one friend did, because there's always going to be those type of people. You know what I mean? And so society thinking that thinking like, oh, we're gonna teach them, we're gonna make the word they use a bad word they can't say anymore. They're just gonna say something else. You ain't gonna stop people from insulting people ever. Now I'm not saying that, oh, you shouldn't try, but like that was and like I said, it's such a vague term. It's so much of a spectrum. And it seems like, is it encompassing, you know, different mental illnesses or what? Like I said, I'm getting way off track here, so I'm gonna end the video now. What is it? You got like crumbs in my mustache. Um, I'm like way off track. But it was just about certain words. That's all I want to talk about. That people didn't actually know the definition of retarded, so they took it as an insult and created a new word, or not created. The term autism was probably around for a long time. It just wasn't being used by the general public. Like I said, I don't know shit about autism, but I know, and I knew that people were gonna start using it as an insult, and it's not that common of like people. But you'll hear guys, and you know the type of guys that's gonna do it. You know, if that person wasn't a woman, they would have heard that a lot sooner. Because there are so many guys, like, they act completely different when women are around. So, you know, she probably is like friends with a bunch of guys that use the word autism as an insult. They just don't do it around her because they don't like that she wouldn't like that. And, you know, whatever. So that's that. I just wanted to talk about, like, because people are talking about autism, you know, and if Tylenol causes autism, you know, that's what's on everybody's mind today. Um, I didn't even really see the whole thing. I did see something Trump has said about it, and he was saying, "Oh, you got nothing to lose." Basically, he was saying, Sound like Donald Trump was saying, like, listen, let me, if you haven't noticed, you may, like, I am not a fan of Donald Trump at all. But it sounded like he was saying, we got no proof that Tylenol causes autism. But not taking Tylenol isn't going to make your pregnancy worse in terms of pain or whatever uncomfortableness it might. But he's talking about it's not going to injure the child to not take Tylenol. So if there is any chance that Tylenol could cause autism, there's no there's no reason to risk it. I'm talking about that in another video. I'm gonna make another video about that because that's another topic.